Face to face, hand to hand, film to film.
Welcome to another episode of Film to Film. My name is Iñaki Linero, and I'm here with James Shergan. Hey James, how are you doing?
I'm well. How are you, Iñaki?
I'm doing well. This is our episode where we're going to be talking about a contemporary movie, a movie that came out almost this year. Maybe an Oscar contender, probably not. I'm pretty sure it'll have like one of the actors getting into the Oscars. But yeah, today we're talking about Spencer, the 2021 film by Pablo Larraín, or Pablo Larraín, like Americans call it. So, a film about the Royals. How do you feel about this movie?
I respect the craft that went into this film, but I found this film to be quite dull, if I'm being honest. And I felt sort of similar to how I felt about Lorraine's previous film, Jackie. One of his previous films, Jackie, as I did this. It's very well done in terms of like design and stuff like that. Some good performances as well. But I just, the premise and the royal family is just not something that I could really get into.
All right. So I've been watching. For a while, I was watching The Crown. But I knew that I should not expect anything like The Crown in this film.
No.
From what I'm aware, the folks who do follow the royals closely do not like this movie at all, because they're like, oh, it's extremely inaccurate. That's a lot. There are a lot of royal Nates out there.
I was about to say that. You mean Nathaniel?
There are a lot of royal Nathaniels out there who, did not read the very first thing that comes out of the movie, which literally tells you a fable from true tragedy, which basically tells you this is not true. This is fiction created from a real story, but it's fiction. And if you take it as fiction, I personally think I actually like this movie. I liked it probably more than from what I remember of Jackie.
Okay, interesting. Okay, I wasn't sure if you would feel similar to me to the not. It sounds like you liked it, so that's good.
Yeah, I guess what I liked about this one is that it sort of it kind of went off the wall. Like it just in Act 2 and 3, it kind of goes crazy.
Right. I mean, in some ways, this doesn't change my feelings on the film, but I think the film, what they tried to do is kind of interesting rather than being really pedantic down to the detail of like detailing Diana and like this weekend here. It's really more of a psychological horror movie. If anything, we have her eating beads. Some of the cinematography, especially when she goes into her old house, is like almost straight out of a very atmospheric, like Carpenter's The Fog or something, like a really misty horror film. Those were a few of the aspects I did appreciate, at least.
Yeah, no, in some places they've been talking they almost mention this royal house or castle, whatever, as being similar to the Overlook Hotel.
I could see that. Even like the way that they shoot it, there's like a lot of overhead shots. The symmetry and stuff like that is really striking. And like also the way that Lorraine, I feel like I'm helping the cause of this film, even though I didn't care for the film. But even like the way that there's like these tracking shots where the tracking shot is like really far away from Kristen Stewart, and we're just like watching her go through the grounds. I totally see that, actually. I didn't think of that, but that's a good comparison. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think that's perhaps why I really enjoyed this movie, because maybe I was already I read somewhere about the Overlooks Hotel comparison, and after I read about it, it was right before I watched the movie, or not right before, but it was like a little bit before I watched the movie. So when watching it, I kind of went in with I want to watch a horror, and I looked at those elements, and I personally enjoyed it because of all of that. I think I consider this movie playful and not subtle at all. This is not a subtle movie. It's subtle plot. I mean, it's subtle when it comes to the plot, because you don't really. I mean, unless you know, like, I mean, how much do you know about the Lady D's story?
I mean, I actually did. I've only seen one season of The Crown, and it was the most recent season with her. So that's probably about the extent that I know. I mean, I remember when she did die. I remember it being quite a big deal. But I mean, other than that, it's like it's not something that I have followed or done research or even have a particular interest in.
Yeah, actually, I'm about the same. I watched I watched season 4 of The Crown, and I mean, I did a little bit of Wikipedia just to, like, to get a little bit more info. But I mean, I did not go beyond Wikipedia, so that's pretty surface level. And but what I find interesting is, like, if you did not even have that amount of information, and you watch this movie does not explain to you anything. Like, if you didn't know that, Prince Charles, her husband, was cheating on her, and the existence of Camilla at all, and you just watch this movie, you would. I mean, yeah, you wouldn't know what the fuck's. I mean, you wouldn't know about that part of the plot. But interestingly enough, I think this is one of those movies that it doesn't care.
No, I agree with that. Yeah.
And that's what I mean by it's very subtle. It's very subtle on its plot. It, like, if you didn't know what was happening, this movie's not gonna spoon feed you what happened, like, at all.
Yeah. Right, and maybe to some extent it doesn't even matter too. I mean, it seems like it's just trying to really journey into like a very disturbed mind at this point. And like, obviously, I think it does take her side on most stuff, but it's like it's not trying to explain to you. I mean, I do appreciate, actually, now that you mention it, how it does do this in a way that, like, The Crown, the Crown is, like, mainly here, to entertain and kind of show the story and stuff like that. And it's obviously trying to achieve some degree of accuracy. So I kind of do like how this does flip it on the head. So maybe I like this as a concept more than I like it as or enjoy it as a film. I had not thought of it in that same way. I almost wish that I had approached it. I approached it more as a blank slate, which may have actually been a disservice to the film if I had looked at it more of a psychological film, which looking back at it, it totally is.
Yeah. Anyway, so I'm gonna throw in the summary before we continue. So I got this out of IMDb. Mm-hmm. For the folks who are not planning to watch this movie, and somehow, I don't know how you could spoil this movie necessarily.
Yeah, this movie does not have much plot.
Yeah. So it says, during her Christmas holiday with the royal family at the Sandringham Estate in Norfolk, England, Diana Spencer, struggling with her mental health problems, decides to end her decade-long marriage to Prince Charles. What do you think?
Sure.
Yeah, I almost feel like this gives you more plot than the movie did.
Yeah.
It. I mean, it's basically, I think it is based on the Last Christmas. From what I read, it is supposed to be based on the Last Christmas Party in 2001. That was Last Christmas Party that Princess Diane went to before she basically separated herself from the royal family. But I mean,
Okay.
But you don't need to know that. I in my opinion, I think I don't know. Again, I viewed it I guess I viewed it as a character study, or not a character study, but a psychological study of this human in this 3-day party created by monsters. And if you watch it in that manner, you're like, yeah. I mean, I enjoyed it. I think there are lots of little elements that are kind of playful in that. It almost shows you the royal family like purposefully making everything miserable for her.
Yeah, I mean, I had a trip booked to London, and I immediately after watching this film, I was just like, fuck that, I ain't going. This film just really wallows in that misery. I mean, like, it's overcast. It felt a lot like Seattle in some ways. Like, it's just constantly overcast. Everything. It's just very dreary. The whole mood of this film. Yeah.
Although what's interesting is in the costumes is where they shine with the colors. So it's very colorful when it comes to the costumes, but then everything else is just gray and cold. So yeah, I was mentioning how what's interesting is that this movie is very subtle with its plot, but not subtle at all with its theme. Like it has. So it how would you describe the royal family according to this film? Cold? Oh, this movie will remind you that. It's cold. The house is fucking cold. Everything is cold. Why don't you turn up the heat? Oh, why is it so cold? Mommy, I'm cold. There's also like the pheasants. Oh, they're beautiful but stupid. Royals would like to kill them. Why do you kill them? I don't know. It's fun.
Tradition.
And I mean, they're very on the nose, but I kind of enjoyed it. I think this is one of those where it's like, Lady D is kind of like a pheasant. She's there to be watched and killed. And I think they tell you many times, but also they show it to you. I mean, not that she gets killed, but I don't know. I enjoyed it as in like it was almost in some moments dark comedy.
Interesting. Maybe where you saw comedy, I just didn't find it there for me. Yeah, I mean, I would say I agree with most everything you said there. I mean, this film is just oppressive. The whole thing is meant to be oppressive, certainly by design. I mean, I think we'll probably get to it at some point, but the Johnny Greenwood score here, and I'm a big fan of his work. I think it's really strong, but also certainly not a subtle score, but it also really contributes to that oppressive feel of like the oppressive royal family, oppressive environment, and just the score. It's just everything is just like bearing down on you. And yeah, it's totally also a mood piece in that sense that you really feel it. I did not find the humor in it, so I could see what it was doing. I don't know if I particularly enjoyed it. So I think there's like a small difference in how we processed it, but
yeah. Well, we'll get to the parts, the few moments where I thought there was some humor in there. I think it's the humor part is, I guess you could say, very subtle. But I guess, and maybe not humor, or maybe extremely dark humor, similar to I guess The Club. Like going back to other films of Larraín that the only other film by Larraín that we've talked about, where there is the level of like absurdity on a certain situation kind of almost makes things comedic. Where
I could see that. I mean, sorry, I interrupted you. Please.
No, but basically like how inhumane, for example, or how like fucking weird the royal family is. Like you barely see them talking, but every time they're there, they're like just like a fucking machine, right? Like for example, on the table, the queen is eating, and then everyone is eating at the same rhythm. Everything's moving at the same rhythm. It's almost like that. It's at at almost an absurd level that you start laughing because it's just like you see this person in front of these creatures that are just almost zombies.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, and I appreciate that about the film too, is like, I mean, it's a movie and not like a show like The Crown. So you're never going to have the same amount of material there. So The Crown has a lot more room to like have dialogue and stuff. So I appreciate how this has just a totally different angle. It's like so much of it is about just like a look from, I don't know, that one guy that's like watching over her the whole film. Or and it's less of like I'm going to express it through dialogue or interesting stuff, especially through the royal family. As you said, it's like the Queen, we have like, I don't know, 5 or 6 close-ups of her, and they're all really, really expressive, and she hardly says anything the whole film, but we totally get the vibe that it's going for here. And we get sort of like the feel of at least her image, and how Diana perceives her. And yeah.
So yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the composer, John Greenwood. I personally really liked his composition here. Very on your face, but also very jazzy, dissonant, with a mix between classical and jazz.
Extremely dissonant. Yeah, I think if I were to give a small critique to Larraín, I think he may have overused the score just a little bit. Maybe it's just for me, the oppressive feel of this film was just a little too much. But it's certainly an effective score. I think it's really good. I mean, Johnny Greenwood actually, interestingly, did score for another film I saw this year that was one of my favorites, The Power of the Dog. Which is also a great score. But he's definitely one of my favorites as far as like film composers go. The There Will Be Blood score is definitely a classic, and definitely extremely memorable. And he brings his best stuff here. I mean, I think it's a good score in the sense of just like you are going to remember this score, and it certainly does convey the mood that they're going for just throughout the whole film. And yeah, so it's certainly impactful.
Yeah. And then this was written by Stephen Knight, who has written a bunch of other stuff that I do not know of. So I'm not even going to list and pretend to know them. But I guess he's been nominated for different things, including a BAFTA. I wonder if this film will win any Chilean awards, since it's a Chilean production.
Yeah, well, we love these Chilean and British productions. Promising Young Woman, great British film.
I know, this one, a great Chilean film.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, interestingly enough, that if you look at the countries where this film comes from, Chile is credited as one of them. Even though nothing.
In Germany as well.
Germany as well, and that's because the shooting locations, I think, were German, but actually more importantly it's because of the production companies. So the two main production companies for the film were Fabula, which is the production company owned by Larraín's brother, and Komplizen Film, which is the German production company. So those were the two production companies that actually made it, and then Neon, of course, if you watch this in the U.S., it would be the distributor.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm actually intrigued about that, because I mean we're talking about then literally this is a Chilean production, technically Chilean German production, which is kind of insane.
Yeah, except it's like about the royal family, and it stars Kristen Stewart. Jesus. Yeah. Yeah,
you said it British. You were like, it was Kristen Stewart.
Yeah.
Yes. This is definitely the kind of movie that if you have. So I agree with you in certain areas, in that plot. If this was done in the hands of a lesser director and a lesser actor, this movie would not work. And here is where Kristen Stewart definitely shines. I think I'm not gonna be one of those people who says, "Oh, I always believed in Kristen Stewart. I think she's amazing," and the reason is because I don't think I've ever seen a movie with her.
Really? I've never seen the Twilights either, so I can't speak to those. Interesting. I thought she was quite good in a film from a year ago, Underwater. So I liked her from that. But come to think of it, that may have been the only thing I've ever seen her in. So this might be my second Kristen Stewart film.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to. It's funny. Underwater was always in my list of 2020 films because it's like supposed to be a horror. It's not rated very highly, but she's rated very highly in it.
I mean, it is what it is, and I think Underwater is pretty darn good for what it tries to be. I mean, I have a soft spot for sort of like aquatic horror, but so if you gave me the choice of rewatching Underwater or Spencer, I'd probably choose Underwater. But they both do what they set out to do.
Yeah, for sure. Although, if I were you, I would rewatch this, but now with the mind frame that this is a horror, and maybe you would enjoy it more.
It's certainly possible. I think I don't know. I have to rethink the film. I think it's a little long in the teeth for psychological horror. I would probably reduce the length if you're just kind of taking it from that angle. But, maybe I just wasn't in the mood. This is kind of like it's very arty in a lot of the ways it was done. And it could just be the case that I just didn't connect with it in this viewing. I mean, I think the craftsmanship and stuff like that is certainly there.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you. I mean, so when going into craftsmanship, again, this is, I would say, the highlight of Larraín's work, right? The man is a craftsman, and he definitely can craft a scene really well. And here is where with all his movies, whether I like them or not, I cannot deny that the way that they're crafted are very thoughtful and methodical. When it comes to Kristen Stewart, like I personally don't know how Princess Diana was in real life. I mean, beyond like what you've seen in clips and shit, so I cannot really talk about it. And also, I mean, I cannot distinguish a good British accent from a shit British accent, so I don't know how good her accent was either. However, what I can say is, when watching this film, I did not think I was watching Kristen Stewart. I thought I was watching the character. Like, I forgot about the actors, because I've seen Kristen Stewart in like SNL and shit like that. But like here, I was watching this traumatized woman by the royal family, and in that sense, I would say Kristen Stewart did an amazing job. Like, she was fully immersed in this character to a point that it was not distracting either. I would say distracting either. Like, I would say one of the flaws in Jackie is that that was distracting sometimes, because I don't know. I mean, actually comparing it to sillier movies, but I'm gonna compare with you could say that I have. Do you ever see Solo from like the Star Wars spin-off films?
Actually, I never have.
But okay, so you got two actors who played the roles of like one was playing Harrison Ford and the other one was playing Danny Glover was playing whoever the fuck played Lando, and they practiced really hard to get all their mannerisms, and they did really good. But because of that, it actually became really distracting.
I see.
With Stewart, I don't know if she got the mannerisms of Princess Diana, but it was not distracting. Like, you did not feel like they were trying to pretend to be a character.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I thought she was quite good in this too. I also have no idea how to judge the accent. I mean, it's interesting. Is like you very rarely see a American actor doing a British accent these days. Almost never. So it's kind of interesting casting in that sense. But Yeah, I mean, what do you know? What the and I mean, judging just from the nominations here, where Kristen Stewart is definitely one of the most acclaimed people in terms of like nominations for various awards. I see a lot of Kristen Stewart and Johnny Greenwood here. I'm guessing people did like her performance, but do you know what the Nathaniels in the Crown world think of her?
I don't know. Like that's like so what I've read and listened about this film, you know, it's usually done by Americans. So almost everyone says the same thing I said, which is, "Who are we to judge?" um, and then you gotta add the fact that apparently the royals talk really funny too, like even in British standards apparently.
Uh-huh. But I mean, like her talking too could be a little different because she's not like she didn't grow up in the royal family too. I imagine.
Yeah, although she was from a like the aristocratic like families of that area, so I don't know.
Yeah, of course she was.
Yeah, I mean, regardless, that like if we're completely ignoring the reality of Princess Diana, I think Kristen Stewart did a really good job at convincing you. Also, like um, one thing that this film I think did really well, and this is both goes from her acting and I think maybe the writing and directing, is showing you how like despite how miserable she was, the character tried her best to be a strong mom for her kids. And those were the moments where like the moments where 'cause I read a lot of complaints about how Kristen Stewart like she's always sad in the entire film, and it's like no, like whenever she's with her kids, like she like the character brights like you know lights up, and you know shows that like that's the only thing she cares about is the kids there, and I think an area where going back to it, like you know, I don't know anything about Princess Diana, but I mean a lot of people say she was a great mother and like way better than you know most royals, and this film definitely tries to encapsulate that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's a couple scenes that do stand out as far as that oppressive tone. I would agree with you about the kids. The other one is when she's with Maggie, especially towards the end, and we get that surprise. Those scenes have a lot more warmth to them. I mean, anything like any scene with Kristen Stewart alone, she's sort of anticipating hanging out with the actual royals and stuff like that, and they have that really strong oppressive feel. And then when she actually is with the royals, which is actually not that long, they also have like that overbearing feel to it as well. But which I mean is frankly the bulk of the film. But yeah, I mean it is true. It's like when she is allowed to be with characters she actually cares for, then it is the film does lighten up and have a lot more warmth to it.
Yeah, I mean this film is a lot. I would say half of this film is actually a lot of anticipation more than anything else. It's her dread of going to the next event, the next scheduled event.
Yeah.
To wear the next scheduled dress.
Yeah. I mean, this film could also just be called The In-Laws.
I know. I know. It's like Weekend at the In-Laws. And it would work the same way. And I mean, that's kind of what it is, right? Like,
yeah. I mean, shit, if they were my in-laws, I'd fucking want to move to Canada, too.
Let's hope your in-laws don't listen to this podcast.
No, I'm saying if those British snots were my in-laws.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean like the worst in-laws in the world, for sure, the royals. So yeah, let's jump into a couple of scenes. So sure. I mean, one of the areas where I really love was just the opening scene, where you have this motorcade of the army, like the British army going into this house, and literally that's, I mean, the movie begins with that. Like you don't see any royals or anything. You just see the army coming into a house, looking into it, bringing these boxes, and you have this beautiful shot of of a dead bird, and the car's just driving by it, almost hitting it, but not. Kind of just like, I think it's a pheasant too, which, goes into the theme that the movie keeps on pounding on you throughout the movie. And you have that. You hear the royals as they're coming in, like you hear, like, I think Prince Anne, as she's sort of, I think, already bitching about Diane. But everything is just very structured, very militaristic. Even the cooks coming in as an army as well. And then, right mixed with that, you have a completely different scene with Diane basically driving by herself alone, looking at a map and lost as fuck, and all of that culminating with that beautiful aerial shot of the place, and then your title card, and one of the more dissonant sounds from Greenwood. How are your feelings about that?
Yeah, I mean, like, that stuff definitely. I mean, now that you mentioned The Shining, I can't get rid of that comparison too. I mean, it totally makes sense for there. I mean, it certainly sets the tone of the film, as far as just like very militaristic. I didn't know that the military was so involved in like the day-to-day and like cooking and stuff like that. So it is very interesting to see it. It's all shown from a very, very cold and withdrawn point of view too, very distant, everything. So it's a nice, I mean, I'd say it's an effective way to open the film.
Yeah, I agree. And also you could almost say that it sets it sets a theme of like, is this a house with a fancy party, or is this almost like a prison? Like the fact that, you got like guards everywhere, like it almost, and I mean, to Diana, it's basically a prison.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, even at one point, we have like the curtains shut down, and like she literally has to use wire cutters and stuff like that. So, I mean, prison makes sense.
Yeah. So, and I think that's a nice opening. Basically, it sets the mood. Once you're there, you realize, oh, this is not gonna be pleasant.
Yeah. We're not all going to be listening to happy music in the car while we go away. All I need is a miracle. It won't just be all I need is a miracle playing while we see the royal family.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, and what thoughts do you have beyond that?
About the opening?
Yeah.
I don't know if I have a ton. I mean, it certainly sets the mood and the tone of the film, and it kind of shows the very ritualistic, based in tradition, and in my opinion, highly silly nature of kind of the British royal family and how these things are required. Yeah. Yeah,
and to add to that silliness, and this is the part where I think, because I don't know if all of this is accurate, right? So one of the parts that I sort of enjoy is the military bringing these boxes that almost look like they could be weapons, and then you have the cooks opening it, and it's like, fruits and vegetables and shit like that.
Yeah.
And I think I don't think that's real, and I think that's just adds that little dark comedy of like how absurd everything is.
Yeah. Interesting. I didn't even think of it as comedy, but it is a nice little touch. I mean, the more we talk about this film, the more I at least can appreciate some of like the thought and touches that Larraín and company put into it.
Mm-hmm. So then, the other big scene, I think it's the dinner. So, I mean, this is the part where, again, everything works like a clockwork, right? You have once again, Diana is late, and everyone is sitting there waiting for her, and it's just a very cold scene where no one's really smiling. Everyone's just quiet, and Diana sits. You got the queen looking at Diana with disdain, and there's one of the few close-ups of the queen that you get, and then she eats, and then everyone eats, and everyone's eating at the like same pace. No one talking to anyone. Everyone just quietly eating, and then Diana is the only one who actually has like emotions beyond that. I think that's one of the more, in my opinion, it's probably my favorite scene in that it sort of builds up through repetition of just she staring at like different people, and then she being like the only person, and everyone just being sort of a drone, and you have the music in crescendo until she eats her pearls, obviously in her head, in that scene. I think it's sort of I don't know. As you said before, it's very oppressive.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, like, what thoughts you have on that?
Yeah. I mean, it's the scene that also sort of shows you that, hey, we're not going into a very literalistic translation of this. Like, we're going into some weird psychological, almost like body horror type stuff. I do wonder if this is the scene that really triggered the Crown Nathaniels that were like, oh, this didn't happen. She didn't eat her pearls or whatever, which I find to be kind of amusing. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I almost feel like I need to rewatch the film under that lens of just looking at more as like a psychological horror film in order to properly judge these films. For me personally, I was like, that's kind of weird. It's going into these interesting places. Like everything in this film, it's pretty well shot. The Queen's looks of just like total disdain are very striking. She doesn't have to say anything throughout it. So yeah, I mean, and the rhythm of people eating and Diana just sort of standing out makes sense. I mean, I don't know if I have a ton new to say about the scene other than it is kind of the scene that shows you we're in kind of new uncharted territory that's very different from something like The Crown.
Yeah, I mean, it shows you that you're sort of, it's almost like a nightmare, like especially with the music. Yeah. And this is, again, the other part where I think there's a touch of comedy, because you have this music that keeps on building up. And I don't know, like in my opinion, like to me, it was making me feel anxious. So, you're like, okay, this is film music. And then the camera moves back, and the music is literally being played there. Yeah, like you have the band playing that music right there in that dinner. So
yeah, you can't escape it.
So yeah, you can't escape it, but it's almost like it sort of makes you feel like the royals purposefully put a band to play this oppressive music.
Yeah,
I mean, it can be read that way.
Yeah, I mean, even that continues on to even the church music too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and speaking of the church, those are the other moment where you got the church music, kind of like church music, and then you have the paparazzis, which the way it's shot, it's like almost like Diana is part of a freak show. Mm-hmm. And no, again, once again, it's like she's the only one who's feeling it. Everyone else is like doesn't give a shit. I mean, apathy is a big part of this movie.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. True. I mean, like, we hardly see her husband throughout the whole thing. So, and, like, when we do see him, our impressions are not necessarily positive. So, I mean, the breakdown in communication and stuff like that are certainly hinted at. Sorry, I interrupted you. Please go ahead.
No, you didn't. Go ahead.
That's most of what I was going to say. It's like, for a while there, I was like, where is Charles? Like, who is Charles in this? And it takes a while for him to even get introduced. And I think they may share just one scene together where they're talking by the pool table. Another scene where I do like how it was shot. And I mean, that, as in the case of the Queen, it's like, that's all you need to know, that the marriage is not working. I do wonder a bit with this film, too, if it would be... if it would have worked better to some extent if they didn't bother with the historical figures and just made a some sort of rich family drama or something like that. If it would have, I don't know, it certainly would have pissed off the Crown Nathaniels less, but I wonder how the film would be different or similar in that sense.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. I mean, I think I think it's one of those questions. It's kind of like similar to this type of conversations that some folks have with the Joker, right? Because the Joker could have been about any guy who is going crazy and not the supervillain. But
Yeah.
but the context of it being the supervillain everyone knows makes a big difference. I think here you kind of have the same thing. It could have been any story about a woman who is terrorized by her in-laws, but the context of it being Princess Diana makes it different. Makes it it gives you a context that at the end of the day is still it's real. Like, I mean, I guess more than real or not is there are things that we don't know. This film basically explores, right? Like, we don't really know. I mean, we know the facts, right? We know that Diana did go and have, she did. The royal family did have this 3-day Christmas dinner or shit. We know that they would weigh themselves at the beginning and at the end to make sure that they gained 3 pounds to show that they enjoyed themselves, which is a weird tradition. We know that. We also know how, like, there's a lot of stuff like that are just very ritualistic. Yeah. We don't know beyond that. We also know that she hated that.
Yeah, I almost wonder if it would have been interesting if, you know how, like, Kurosawa or whatever adapts Shakespeare a bunch, and obviously you don't call, like, the Japanese character played by Mifune King Lear or something like that. You change it. Right. I almost wonder if they like just change the names, like Princess Diana and stuff like that, and they're like, oh yeah, that's basically playing Princess Diana, but we're going to change everyone's names, and we all know it is, but I just wonder if that would have impacted the perception in a slightly different way, and made it feel like a little more, removed from reality rather than saying this is Diana Spencer. I wonder how it would have played in that sense. I'm thinking mostly out loud here. I'm not advocating this necessarily. I just feel like it would be an interesting idea to explore.
I agree. I think what this film tried to do is explore the psychological feeling of her. And I mean, some folks do think that this movie actually ends up being very accurate because they're not trying to get the facts right. Instead, they're trying to get the emotions right. And this movie is all about emotions. I mean, like, the picture and scene is trying to convey an emotion. Whether it's, like, even her being at, going into her old house, which is almost a horror scene, and sort of mixing that, which is the next, right, like the next big scene in my opinion, the next big set piece is her house, and showing this decrepit house, showing this house that is kind of falling apart, and the representation of basically probably the only happy place that she had or she can remember, and that in the present is falling apart. And that's her life, right? In the at the very present, it's falling. It's like her life is falling apart, and that's how she feels. I think like, and I mean, and that's usually the turning point into Act 3, which is where she kind of goes like, "Fuck this," right? I think it tries to paint a very accurate picture of how someone in that situation would feel, and how I think either the writer Stephen Knight or Pablo Larraín and the writer believed that she felt in those situations.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, in terms of conveying emotional accuracy and stuff like that, I think that's real. I do feel like when you call a film Spencer and you make it about Princess Diana, there's going to be certain baggage and expectations. And, maybe in the years that pass, maybe in like 10 or 15 years or 20 years, people are going to be like, did you see that weird psychological horror film called Spencer about Princess Diana? And people are just gonna like approach the film in a different way and reevaluate it in a slightly different way. Because I do feel like there are going to be certain expectations, especially when we talk about biopics and stuff like that. And in many ways, this defies those expectations in a pretty interesting way. But in a way that I do feel like tosses people off balance and does make it hard to evaluate the film on its merits. Because, yeah, I mean, if you are a stickler to the facts and stuff like that, you're just not going to like this film. I don't put myself personally in that camp. So I don't know if this is my own personal critique of the film so much as it is, I do wonder just perceptions and stuff like that. Because there is a huge swath of people that are just like, they're like, oh, this is why the son of X and X person didn't like this film. And that just happens on all these films and stuff like that. And for a film that's not even trying to necessarily be factually accurate, I do wonder if it would have been better served to mess with those expectations by playing around with names or something like that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, it does play, I guess, with some names. I mean, there was never the Timothy Spall character, or the Major Gregory or whatever his name, Alistair Gregory, the
Okay, sure.
butler. That person's not real.
And that's why I hate the film. As soon as I found out that guy's not real, I was out.
I know Prince Philip is not real either. No, just kidding.
His real name is Prince Felipe.
Felipe. The Sally Hawkins character, Maggie, obviously it's not real either. I mean, these are amalgamations of real people, perhaps, but you know, no, I agree with you. I mean, and some folks talk about that when, you know, when there have been like remakes of like Hamlet or remakes of Othello and whatnot that keep all the names characters and all that, but they're reimaginations, and a lot of people get really pissed about it. And you know, then there's a comparison like between like reimagination with keeping with Romeo and Juliet and keeping all their names versus West Side Story, which is also Romeo and Juliet, but they changed everyone's names, and it's, you know, like a complete, you know, reimagination of the story, but it's the same fucking story when you think about it.
Right. Yeah.
And you know, those are good questions to ask. I feel like I actually applaud this approach in this film, in that I am not a huge fan of biopics personally.
Same here, actually. I personally don't care for, like, and I can't disagree more with the sticklers for the facts in most cases.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's, you know, I mean, I do personally get angry when facts don't get right, in biopics, but the problem is that my biggest problem with biopics in general is that most of them are like from the beginning till the end, right? Like they're like, oh, from childhood all the way to the end. I usually like short biopics, and the few that I've liked that are the whole life story of a character are like, you know, Rocket Man. That's in my opinion like probably one of the better biopics, because it's like it's an LSD dream, right? Like the whole movie is basically an LSD dream of the entire lifetime of, you know, Elton John. And I'm like, this works because at this point I'm not expecting, the expectation of getting an accurate telling is not there, and so it's not lying to you, and that's and then not only it's not lying to you, but then the movie is interesting because it already tells you right away, I'm not gonna try to be accurate here. I'm gonna try to tell you my view of the story.
I see.
Here with Spencer, that very beginning quote, "A fable from a true tragedy," is telling you the same thing. It's like, do not expect the truth, and if you are expecting the truth, you're not gonna have fun. And I think the movie doesn't care about, you know, like the Crown Watchers, which is kind of hilarious because it did come out like right between season 4 and season 5 of The Crown, while people are waiting for season 5, and they're like, "Ooh, a movie about Spencer! I'm gonna watch this." and I appreciate the balls that took to make this movie.
Yeah. I mean, those people are not gonna like the film if they expect anything remotely like The Crown.
Which I wouldn't be surprised was 90% of the folks who who paid for the ticket.
Probably.
Like, I can imagine like a 60-year-old Karen watching this movie and
be like, what the fuck?
I don't know. Anyways, like I personally, I guess perhaps that's another reason why I like this. It's because like this film has taken so many like liberties while telling you, not lying about it, like telling you, like in the forefront that I think, perhaps, I appreciate it. I also appreciate. I mean, going into more of the technical aspects, I appreciate this as this is an art film. There's no question about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like this, perhaps like one of my favorite moments in this film is the one where she has that beautiful dress for one of the dinners, right? As she is literally just resting her face on the toilet. It's the way it's framed, and who is the cinematographer here? Because I don't know if I have to. You would give it credit to Larraín on that. Claire Mathan or Mathon.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah, Claire Mathon or Mathan.
She did Portrait of a Lady on Fire.
There you go, which is another beautiful film. That picture right there is just so beautiful. Of it, and it's a picture of such a fucked up thing, and that detail there of just the basically being an art piece. I really appreciate. And I think when it comes to cinematography, I mean, this is where it went above and beyond as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, and of course there's the ending, which I don't know. What was how did you feel about the ending?
By the ending, I think I'd already basically formed my views of the film. It is kind of amusing in like a just total tonal shift. Like the moment they start playing the song in the car and they drive away and then go get some KFC. It's I didn't hate it, but I did kind of laugh a little bit at it, just because it's such a break from the oppressive tone, and I do think that is intentional, pretty obviously, but yeah, so I was okay with it.
Yeah, I agree. I think it is a huge tonal change, but I think that's the whole point, right? It's as soon as you leave that house, as soon as she stood up for the tradition by taking the children away from hunting, that breaking point, right, where she stands right between the pheasants and the guns, because she wants her children to go there, to go with her. I think ending on that nice 80s song, basically back to modernity, back outside this stuffy place of the past, where you see Anne Boleyn appearing as a ghost everywhere, because it's the same fucking house where probably Anne Boleyn, the martyr of King Henry VIII, came in, or whatever. The 5th?
Yeah.
Wait, was it the 8th? I'm not down with my. Here we go. Yeah, the 8th. Like, living that, it gives you hope. Of course, with the knowledge that she's gonna die anyways, but it gives you hope at that moment, and I think I like that. I like the happy ending.
I mean, I talking through this with you, I think we processed the same film, and we feel the same. I think it just worked a hell of a lot better for you than me. I mean, it is the moment where you can finally breathe, and the film is over. So, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I guess also when I'm curious if had this been your pick and you had to work on it, maybe you would have to like think more about it, which happens. But yeah. Anyways, you have any final thoughts about this?
Yeah. I guess for me, I'm trying to think about how I would prefer this film to be, and I think a lot of it just comes down to the story and how it's just not a terribly compelling story that got me to particularly care too much. And I think some of it comes down to personal preference too. I was looking through like people I follow on Letterboxd, and I did notice that there's actually a pretty big gender breakdown on who liked this movie and not, where the men tend to dislike it more. And then I checked IMDb, and then the men like it more than the women. So then I'm not sure what to exactly make of that. But I do wonder if there's just like I have some sort of a story preference here where I just don't personally connect with these stories in some way. There's a sort of subgenre of giallo films which are like about women getting gaslit, and I tend to like those a lot less than like the average person. So I just wonder if I just cannot get into these types of films in a way where it makes it so like the most I can do is just sort of admire the craftsmanship and appreciate that part of it rather than truly enjoying the film. Because for me, the film was just a bit of a dredge and fairly difficult to get to, just because I wasn't able to connect very strongly with the story. So yeah, I guess that's how I would sum up my views of it.
Okay. I think I've talked I've talked a lot here, but I think this is not my favorite Larraín movie. I still like The Club way more. I think that's still on the top of the films that I've seen from him. But I do appreciate what he attempted here with a very simple story. Again, plot-wise, almost nothing, but it's more getting into the psychology of Princess Diana and dealing with this basically aliens that are the royal family, with these heartless creatures, and I think if you approach this as a horror film, that is a horror of real life, right? That power imbalance. I think this movie did a really great job capturing it, and I don't know. I think overall I liked it. I think I basically kept on watching the entire time till the end.
Got it.
Yeah. So who won?
I will give it to Claire Matan and the drone operator. Good job by both of them. Just capturing that like very shining like space.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's really good. I debate between Kristen Stewart or McCann as well. I think Larraín. Actually, I'm splitting all three of them because Larraín, I think he. I think I'm gonna give it to. I'm gonna be cliche here, and I'll give it to Stewart.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
it seems like you're going with the consensus there.
AKA cliche.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I would give it to Larraín or McCann. I mean, I do think Larraín did a great job at putting whatever was written by Knight into a film.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he would be a very close second. But I mean, this is the kind of film that if you have any lesser actor, it would not work out.
It's true. I mean, she is in the film like almost 99% of the time. Also wanted to say, underrated aspect, she's a good runner. She looks good running. It's like sometimes you see actors running and it's like a little all over the place and they look really messy. But in her brief scene running, I give a thumbs up. I like to see Kristen Stewart in more action films.
Yeah, she should be like well, she's been in war films, hasn't she?
Yeah. I mean, she was in Underwater. I mean, this is a really weird double bill with Underwater, but I would recommend that film to people that are into sort of like that sort of genre of horror.
I mean, it is in my list.
Yeah.
I know she was in an actual like war film where she like plays in another war film that is not underwater where she plays like a military, like a soldier. I haven't seen it, but yeah, I forget what it is. Apparently it's like one of those like smaller films too, but that is highly rated. Oh yeah, Camp X-Ray.
Okay, interesting. I haven't even heard of this film.
Yeah, and I think she also is considered like carrying the movie.
Okay. I mean, it's sort of interesting to see her career in Pattinson's because Pattinson also has sort of started to develop a fairly interesting career in his own right too. Whereas like they're both kind of, I don't know, they had the Twilight baggage on them to start with,
which I consider very unfair baggage. I mean, I have not seen Twilight, but it is a movie that probably is as much garbage as the Transformer films. But somehow everyone hates Twilight way more than the Transformer films.
I mean, it might be just because they're targeted towards younger females generally, and there might be some like cultural misogyny towards that, possibly.
There might be. Anyways.
I mean, it's hard to diagnose these things with certainty, but yeah.
Yeah, I think
that's where my mind would go immediately, at least.
That is where my mind is.
Yeah.
Anyways, what do you rate this?
Man.
5 or 4?
So I started at a 4. You talked me up a fair amount, so I'm gonna give it a 5.5.
All right. I put it as a 7.
Okay, so you didn't like it that much then?
No, it has its flaws. Also, but also I'm not a huge. I don't give 8s and 9s. I think you give 8s and 9s a little bit 9s a little bit easier than I do.
Maybe. I mean, they tend to be for my picks, and I'm picking my favorite movies, so I'm sort of self-selecting it.
Right, but I mean, this was one of our blind jumping onto, you know.
Yeah.
So I gave it a 7, maybe 7.5. I think it. You know, if we were to go into my criticisms, I do think this is not a very accessible film. Period. And you know, if this is kind of film you gotta be in the mood for, and if you're not in the mood for, like, this is not a movie I'm gonna rewatch very often. For example, I think it's a very well made film, but it's not.
Yeah. It's not a nice hang. Yeah, I wonder if they had stuck that stupid label that they put on to some films like elevated horror, people would have a different crowd would have sought it out and liked it.
Maybe, you know. Although then a lot of people would be annoyed, like on the forefront, like people would be bitching about it, because more Nathaniels would start bitching about it way before the film even came out. So they probably said it just to say like, fuck it.
Yeah. I mean, like a horror film with Princess Diana in it, I mean, that sounds interesting to me, but I recognize that I'm probably in the minority there.
Also, it would almost feel distasteful if you actually advertise it as such, because Diana's ending was a horror.
Fair. Even though this film doesn't focus on that at all, but that makes sense too.
Yeah. Anyways, I think we talked enough. You know what? I'm gonna bring it to a 7.5, just because I did talk myself up to it too.
I'm glad you did, because you sounded like you're at a higher level than just a 7 throughout the conversation.
Hey, no, but I'm also like, whenever you come in down, I have to kick it up. I have to like highlight the goods.
Okay, sure.
But yeah, 7.5. Anyways, I think that's it for me.
Cool. That's it for me too. Do you want to take us out?
Oh yeah, sure. You know, again, you know, thanks for listening. You can email us at filmtofilm@gmail.com.
Mm-hmm.
ZA filmtofilm@gmail.com. And you can also find us on Twitter at ZA filmtofilm. By the way, do we have that YouTube channel working?
I have started to upload the stuff onto a YouTube channel, yes, but we'll announce that at a later date.
Oh, okay, yeah. So I mean, we also will have that just in case, you know, you prefer that.
Yeah, for the children out there.
For the children. Yeah, we need to have a TikTok. It just will be our voice on a TikTok.
It's not even. It's just the whole thing. Hour and 20-minute TikTok.
But they're cut into small pieces. Anyways. All right. Ciao.
Adios.